Good morning, y'all. It is early morning. I'm still in my PJs, and we are in the farm kitchen, and we are going to actually get a loaf of bread shaped. We have a loaf of original sourdough here, and so we're gonna just put some flour on our board and get her shaped. As you can see, Cheeky's in the background. She's ready to make another loaf, and so we will go ahead and make a porter wheat out of that as well. And we have some jars to label that I canned yesterday. These are diced tomatoes from my garden. So we're gonna get these labeled and get them put away. There is a lot going on in the kitchen this morning. Okay, now that that is done, that is in the fridge, and it will stay in the fridge for 12 hours. It'll stay in there until this evening, and then I'll go ahead and pull it out, score it, and bake it. We are going to get started with sourdough. This is my porter wheat, and I will turn you around and show you the recipe. There's the recipe, if you'd like to screenshot it. Now, I do not have any more Guinness beer, so this is what we are using. This stuff is delicious. Here is what it looks like after its first mix up. Now we will just let it rest for 30 minutes, and then we will start our stretch and folds. For those of you who do not know, stretching and folding is just, the reason why we do it is to make the gluten strands stronger and to also create a airier, fluffier loaf. So it's creating air bubbles within your loaf and also stretching those strands of gluten and making them stronger, which is what makes up the sustainability of your loaf. Okay, now we're gonna feed Cheeky, my sourdough starter, and basically what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna weigh her up. If she weighs more than 100 grams, I'm gonna go ahead and cut her in half and discard half. If she doesn't weigh more than 100 grams, then I'm just gonna go ahead and add whatever she weighs back in water and flour. So if she weighs 50 grams, I'm going to add 50 grams of flour and 50 grams of water. You're going to notice that I am going to, oh, that reminds me, I've got to, well, I'll finish a thought here for you. I'm going to add wheat flour and white flour, and that is just me. That's my preference. I feel like the wheat flour gives her more food, more nutrition for the times that she sits in the fridge. So my sourdough starter is about 50% wheat, and I also bake a lot of wheat with my sourdough starter. So that is my preference. Some people do rye, some people do stone ground. That's one of the beauties of sourdough, is it is an art, and each baker is individual and each starter is individual. So I did run out of my wheat flour. You will notice I have a 5-gallon bucket behind me. We bulk shop for our dry goods, and so I am going to fill my wheat jar back up with my whole wheat flour before we get started on this. Okay, I need to do a little cleanup, but before I do that, I am going to, if you didn't notice, I could not fill my wheat flour jar all the way up because I ran out of what I have in my stores. So I'm actually going to run out to the shop, and I shouldn't say in my stores, in my bucket, which is the stores in the house. All of our flour, when it gets home from usually Costco, goes into the freezer. And the reason for that is because we live in a very warm place, and no matter where you get your flour, no matter where you get your sugar, your cornmeal, your grains, there are going to be bug eggs in it. And when it gets warm, those bug eggs are going to hatch. And so therefore you get bugs in your flour. A lot of people think that the bugs I thought that the bugs came from my cabinets, and I was deep cleaning my kitchen over and over and over again until I finally had somebody say, no, they come in the flour. Put your flour in the freezer for 24 hours and it kills the eggs. And so I know that that's kind of not what everybody wants to hear, but it's the fact of life. So hence, we're going to do this is going to be like a snowball effect. This is what happens in my life. I need to go out and get flour from the freezer, which means I'm going to be in the shop, which means I'm going to walk by the dog food. So I'm going to go ahead and feed the dogs. And because of the commotion that the dogs are going to cause, the horses are going to know that I'm awake. So I'm going to go ahead and feed the ponies while I'm at it. As soon as I turn the light on in the barn, the cow's going to know that I'm awake. So I'm going to have to feed the cow too. So we're actually going to go out, get flour, and do morning chores. That's just the way it works in my PJs. Haven't gotten much of this drink. Better take one more swig. I have switched over to my tea season, where I'm drinking a lot of tea. Okay. 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 Two old ladies are not awake and out of bed yet, so I will take Bossy's in and scramble her egg for her. She doesn't like raw eggs, and Rescue can get hers when she decides to wake up and come out. Now on to, I'm gonna grab my flour. Looks like I only have one more bag of wheat flour left. I'm gonna have to make a Costco run here soon. Now it's off to feed the ponies and the cow real quick. What are you doing, Hopsy? You a happy boy? Morning, naughty heifer. Oh look, your gray pan's right here today. Awesome. Oh, the petunias are coming back with the cool weather in the baskets at the groom shop. The white flowers are starting to come back and flush out and be more of a part of the baskets. There for a while there was very little white on these because it was so hot. Now they're coming back. All right, everybody in here is eating breakfast. Morning, Miss Grace. Grace is not a morning person. She prefers to be left alone while she's eating her breakfast. Morning, Mr. Chance. Oh, it looks like I need to pay kitty allowance too. Okay, back in the kitchen, we have Bossy's egg cooking in the little, I call it the eggerator. I don't even know what this little thing is called. I'll have to look it up. Apparently they're just called an egg cooker, which is so much less fun than eggerator, so I'm gonna keep calling it an eggerator. My hands are washed, very important, and we need to do our first stretch and folds on our sourdough bread before we go on to getting the wheat flour situation rectified. Wet fingers are make your job a lot easier when it comes to stretching and folding. If you just dampen your fingers, it doesn't stick so bad, because it does stick. All right, one bag. It's about 3/4 of a 5-gallon bucket. Okay, now we are moving on to start my sourdough. It's a sourdough discard sandwich loaf, and this is going to be the honey wheat version. Here is the recipe again. We just mix it until it's just formed a shaggy dough. There it is. Now we'll cover it and let it rest for 30 minutes. Meantime, stretchy foldy time. Oh, I didn't wet my fingers. Bee's egg got done and I put it in the fridge to cool. So we'll take it out and put it in her bowl. Here you go, sister. All right, our alarm's going off for our bread. So let me wash my hands and we will get the next ingredients in it. 60 grams butter. 463. 20 grams of sugar. 20 grams of honey. Nothing's better than the wildflower blend from Storm Honey Farm. 10 grams of salt, or 11, and 7 grams of instant yeast. Mix it for 6 minutes or until it's slapping the sides. We just want a nice smooth dough ball. Okay, our 6 minutes is up. And this is what she looks like. Nice and smooth. Is more or less what we're looking for right here. So we'll go ahead and cover it back up for an hour this time. All right. Alarm just went off again to stretch and fold. I'm going to trying to hold this so that you guys can see, but for those of you who do not know about the clothespins tell me what stretch and fold I'm on, because the stretch and folds vary by time. So the first stretch and fold is 30 minutes, and then 15, 15, 15, and then 30, 30. So it just helps me know which one I'm on. I don't have to keep it like in my memory while I'm out on the farm working or whatever the case may be that I'm doing. If I've got more than one loaf going at one time, the clothes clips really, really help. Stretch and fold. Just washed my hands. I did finally get out of my pajamas. Okay, that's its final stretch and fold, and it will sit on the counter for 12 hours now until this evening. And then I'll shape it, put it in a Benetton basket, and put it in the fridge for 12 hours. Okay, now we are going to shape this discard loaf so that it fits in this pan. Here's what she looks like now. Nope, not coming out. I am basically just going to try to roll this out nice and smooth here. There it is. And that needs to rest for an hour. Now normally that's going to rest on the counter for another hour, rise. However, I have got an appointment to go to, and so I am going to actually put it in the fridge to slow it down just a little bit. That is the joy of sourdough. It's a little bit flexible. So I'm actually going to put it in the fridge and I'll bake it off when I get home. Okay, we are back home and we are going to pull our bread out of the fridge and let it start to rise for an hour. It'll probably take an hour, maybe an hour and a half for it to rise and be ready to bake. It's already risen some, so probably only gonna take an hour and it'll be ready. It usually takes it an hour if it's sitting out, and of course I've been gone for 4 hours, so it is, by the time it warms up to room temperature, which will take about an hour, it will be risen, I think, about perfectly. So we'll see. I'm gonna set my timer for an hour. In the meantime, our sourdough starter has doubled again, so I'm gonna go ahead and start another loaf. And this time we will be doing the original sourdough loaf, which is right here. Here is what she looks like. Just a shaggy dough, nothing pristine or special, and I'll just cover her up and let her sit for 30 minutes before we start our stretch and folds. Okay, now I'm going to feed my sourdough starter, and I'm actually going to just feed her and put her back in the fridge, and we're going to take out the chocolate sourdough starter and feed it because we'll be making a chocolate loaf next time. Okay, so the chocolate sourdough starter is a little different. Here is my chocolate sourdough starter, and it is, instead of just cutting it in half, I have a recipe for it. So I only keep 25 grams of this every time I use it. So it's 25 grams of this to 50 grams of water, 50 grams of flour, 15 grams of sugar, and 15 grams of cocoa powder, and then the rest goes into discard. And I actually do make a chocolate discard bread as well. We're not going to do that today, but I will save the discard so it doesn't go to waste, because, you know, we try not to let anything go to waste around here. There, now as you can see, I did have to add a little bit more water, and all cocoa powders absorb water at different rates. And so I always have to add a little bit more, and I just do it a little bit at a time until I get this consistency of like really, really almost fudge is what I would say this consistency is. I just kind of play it by the way that it looks. So I don't know how many grams of water it ends up being, but because every cocoa powder saturates differently, you just got to kind of add a little bit at a time until you get the consistency that you want, which is kind of like fudge. Our oven's preheated and we are at an hour, and we have risen above the edge of the pan, so we're going to go ahead and stick this guy in oven. Oven is preheated to 350 degrees and we will bake it for 40 minutes. All right, the alarm just went off. Let's see how this loaf looks. And with that, you guys, we have virtually spent an entire day in the kitchen together. Wasn't that fun? I hope you guys had a beautiful day. Thank you for coming along with me on mine, and I will catch you on the next one. Yours truly.